She said, maybe I should just date Ethan instead. Weeks later, I found their secret messages and walked away silently. Then Ethan dumped her too, and when she came begging at my door, my new wife smiled and closed it. I'm 28 years old, and for almost 4 years I was with my ex-girlfriend, Claire, who was 27 at the time. On the surface, we looked like a couple everyone would admire. We went on trips, celebrated holidays with each other's families, and talked about building a future together. If you looked at our social media pages, you would have thought we were headed straight toward marriage. But what nobody saw was the quiet shadow that was always lurking behind our smiles. That shadow had a name, Ethan. He was Claire's so-called best friend. Now, I've never been the jealous type. I don't believe in controlling who someone can or can't be friends with. But Ethan was different. He wasn't just another guy in her circle. He was always there, whether physically or in conversation. If Claire and I had a disagreement, somehow Ethan's name would get pulled into it. If I forgot to plan a fancy date, she would casually say that Ethan surprised his girlfriend with flowers all the time. If I didn't feel like going out after a long week, she would throw out, well, Ethan would. At first, I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe she was just trying to push me to be more attentive. But over time, it turned into a pattern I couldn't ignore. I realized I wasn't just in a relationship with Claire. I was in an unwanted competition with this perfect standard named Ethan. One evening, we were sitting on the couch arguing about where to eat dinner. I suggested staying in because I was tired, and she let out a loud sigh before saying softly, Ethan wouldn't make such a big deal about this. That stung. It wasn't about dinner anymore. It was about the fact that she always kept Ethan loaded in her back pocket as a comparison, ready to remind me that I could never measure up. I remember half-jokingly saying, maybe you should just date Ethan then. I expected her to laugh, roll her eyes, or call me ridiculous. But instead, she smiled slightly and said, maybe I should. That small sentence changed everything. First, I tried to laugh it off. I didn't want to start another fight. But those 3 words echoed in my mind like a splinter that wouldn't go away. Maybe I should. I heard it while driving, at the gym, even while cooking dinner. No matter what I did, I couldn't shake it. When I calmly brought it up later, telling her that it hurt when she compared me to him, she rolled her eyes and said I was being too sensitive. She claimed Ethan was just her example of how women deserve to be treated, and that I should take notes if I wanted to keep her happy. That wasn't love anymore. That was a test I never signed up to take. Still, I stayed. I told myself it was just a phase, that maybe she didn't realize how much she was hurting me. But looking back, that was my first mistake. The more I tried to talk about it, the more she brushed me off. Every conversation turned into me being too sensitive or overreacting. Deep down, I started to realize that I was losing myself. I wasn't trying to be the best version of me. I was just trying not to fall short of Ethan. The breaking point didn't arrive all at once. Crept in slowly, through little moments that ate away at me like rust on steel. One Friday night, Claire told me she was going out with friends. I didn't think much of it until around midnight when my phone buzzed. Her message said she was staying at Ethan's place because she was too tired to Uber home. My chest tightened as I stared at those words. Our place wasn't far. She could have come back easily. When I called and asked why, she sighed into the phone, as if I were some annoying burden, and said, "Why are you being controlling? His place is closer and I'm exhausted. Stop making a big deal out of nothing." My gut was screaming that something was wrong, but I forced myself to let it go. The next morning when she came home, she was acting off. She avoided my eyes, went straight to the shower, and came out suddenly overly sweet. She hugged me, kissed me, asked if I wanted breakfast. Felt rehearsed, like she was covering tracks. That's when the cracks started turning into craters. Over the next few weeks, I noticed her phone was glued to her hand. She smiled at messages she wouldn't show me. She claimed she was busy with errands or helping a friend, but she wasn't present when she was with me. Her laughter was louder while texting than it was sitting across from me. Then came the moment I couldn't ignore. A mutual friend pulled me aside after dinner and said quietly, "I don't want to stir anything, but Claire and Ethan have been looking a little too close lately. I didn't explode. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I went quiet. I watched, and then the confirmation fell right into my lap. One evening, I borrowed her iPad to look something up. She hadn't turned off the message sync. Her entire conversation history was sitting there like a loaded gun pointed at my chest. I told myself not to look, but my fingers moved anyway, and what I read made my heart collapse inward. Message after message between her and Ethan, flirty jokes, compliments, late-night confessions, and then one that burned itself into my memory. You treat me better than he ever has. I think I made a mistake choosing him. I sat there frozen, reading those words over and over. The pain wasn't just from the betrayal, but from the fact that she had used Ethan against me all this time and now stepped directly into his arms. I didn't confront her. I didn't throw a scene. I simply closed the iPad, set it back down, and let a cold, calm decision form in my mind. She had already chosen Ethan. Now it was time for me to choose myself. In the days that followed, I pulled back. No more extra effort. No more planning dates or initiating conversations. I poured my energy into myself. Late nights at the gym, reconnecting with friends I had neglected, picking up old hobbies that made me feel alive again. Claire noticed, of course. One night she asked, "Why are you so distant lately?" I just shrugged and said I'd been busy or tired. She frowned, but she didn't push too hard. Maybe she thought Ethan was enough to fill the gaps I was leaving behind. 2 weeks later, I decided it was time. After dinner one evening, I looked at her across the table, took a deep breath, and said calmly, "I know about you and Ethan. I'm not going to fight for someone who doesn't respect me. We're done." Her fork froze midair. At first she denied it. Then the tears started. She said she was confused, that it didn't mean anything, that she would end it with him. But I'd already seen the words she could never take back. "I think I made a mistake choosing him," she begged. But my mind was already made up. I packed my things that night. She grabbed my arm, crying, saying, "Please, don't do this, we can fix it." But the truth was simple. The love I once had for her was already dead. I walked out into the silence of the night, and that silence felt like freedom. Word spread quickly through our friend group. Within a week, everyone knew Claire and I were over. She didn't even bother hiding it. Soon enough, she and Ethan were seen together at bars, posting pictures online like they were some fairy tale couple who had finally found each other. It hurt at first. Seeing them together was like salt in an open wound. But I stayed silent. I refused to give her the drama she probably expected. Months passed and karma worked its way in. Ethan stopped being the perfect man she thought he was. Friends told me he flirted with other women, ignored her at gatherings, and slowly pulled away. The same man she claimed was her benchmark for love was now treating her worse than I ever had. Eventually, he dumped her without ceremony, leaving her alone and scrambling. Meanwhile, I had built a new life. I focused on myself, on healing, and on building something better. And that's when I met someone new. She didn't compare me to other men. She didn't dangle someone else over my head. She saw me for who I was and appreciated it. Being with her felt like breathing fresh air after years of living in a smoke-filled room. Then one evening, months later, there was a knock on my door. I opened it and there she was, Claire. Her eyes were red, her voice shaky. She said, "I made a mistake. I miss you. Can we talk?" But before I could respond, my new wife walked up beside me and opened the door wider. She looked at Claire, gave her a calm, knowing smile, and without a word, she closed the door in her face. That was the final closure. The woman who once told me to be more like Ethan had been left with nothing, and I had everything she thought she'd find elsewhere. Respect, peace, and real love.